and I'll kind of address one issue with that. If you look at the pay scale now, which is public record, there are guys that are working at the sheriff's office that have been there 7, 8, 9 years that are sergeants on patrol that make $14 an hour. Well, then you got guys that have never worked in law enforcement before that they're hiring off the street at $16.75 an hour. Well, that is a morale killer for law enforcement within that department. So as a sheriff, it's my responsibility to get that standard level of pay so these guys can not only provide for their families, but provide comfort for their spouse. Now, another thing that we can do, and I have the resources at the Drug Enforcement Administration where I work, I'm attached to in Birmingham. One of the ladies there, her husband was killed in the line of duty down in Pelham. So there are agencies that we can work together with the sheriff's office that will help provide that needed reassurance for those families. And we have those avenues to be partners because law enforcement, if we look at it, is one of the largest brotherhoods in the world. I mean, you go anywhere, law enforcement officers are a brotherhood. So I think as a sheriff, you have to be willing to reach out and look for those groups to provide that support for your deputies and your personnel. But the first thing you have to do as a sheriff is to put that family-oriented environment back in the Cullman County Sheriff's Office where if me and Tim are working together and he's sick or I just had my baby, and I'll give you an example because Tim and I work together. When Tim and I worked together, I had my first son, Tim come by the hospital to see me. That is family-oriented law enforcement. And I think you have to reestablish that within the Cullman County Sheriff's Office. But that is a tone that is set by the sheriff and their command staff to what they are willing to do for their personnel and their families. And we will do that.
You have to staff the sheriff's office, you need to recruit. You know, and I think you've got to have the staff, you've got to have the command staff in place that's willing to go out and recruit. You could take all the applications that come in because there's going to be openings. There's the attrition in law enforcement nowadays more than ever. I mean, it's a revolving door almost. So you have to be able to continually staff it. But like Matt said, there's an internal issue that has to be addressed immediately if I win or if he wins, and that's the internal pay problem. I talked to a sergeant who left the sheriff's office last year, I guess it was. He was making $6 an hour less than someone they hired from another agency to come in. They had a lot less experience than him. That's a morale killer, it really is. As far as programs within the sheriff's office, in 2011, 2012, when I started thinking about running for sheriff and putting together some programs for the sheriff's office, now this is dependent on partnerships. If you partner with Wallace College and some of the other colleges that provide courses in daycare, the sheriff's office could have their own internal daycare for employees. I want to look at doing that. A fitness program kind of runs parallel with the military fitness program. That will lower your health insurance over a period of time once you bring back those results and say, look, this is the number of sick days before it was used by our employees before we started this. This is the number of sick days we've used now, a year later. And it's based on that fitness program we installed or instilled. So there's like 15 different small programs that we're looking at doing to help the employee to provide a better work environment. And what we looked at was some of your Fortune 500 companies like Google is one. We can't have a Starbucks area with lounges and all that stuff. Our guys don't want that, but they want a positive environment. And that starts at the top and goes down with quality and competent supervision. Does that answer your question? Somewhat.
We'll take that. Make this the last question. Is that all right? Because I know you want to come back and do this later, right?
Oh,
Good.
All right. If you don't mind, go ahead.
I have two questions. One is, for Mr. Mack. On the bill about the EBT card, on the food stamp thing, is that gonna affect the elderly too, as far as having to show 3 jobs? Because I can understand it when young people go and try to get food stamps or whatever, but for the older people, most of them are just barely making ends meet from maybe poor decisions when they were younger. And when they get ready to retire, they don't have that funds to make ends meet. And then I've got one for y'all also.
I just looked up the bill, and what it is, it amends an existing bill that just adds those, the applicant, and the bill itself does not, quite honestly, I'm assuming that if you're retired, that you don't have to do that.
I was just wondering,
because
there is
exist-
elderly people that, you
Yeah,
know.
the previous bill did not address the age or anything of them. Now,
Will you check on that before it comes back in?
yeah, TANF, temporary assistance for needy families. And I think that mostly applies to people who are,
Younger.
yeah,
Okay.
working age. But it just says, if any time the recipient of public assistance, the husband or wife of such assistance shall become possessed of any income resources. So it doesn't address age-wise. I'm assuming whatever rules apply now will still
Okay.
apply.
Yeah, because it's
And
different
they-
for elderly, and I just wondered if that fell in the same thing, because I know the elderly food stamps is different than the regular food stamps for regular young people. But I didn't know how that bill fell in there. And then for y'all, I've got a question. I was told that, and it might have been, I might have read in the paper, where Mr. Rainey, you know, he used the money he got extra for the food bump, you know, money, and he uses it to do other things, not his supplement and his income. Which I could care less if prisoners got extra food or not, because, you know, if they go to jail, then they get way too much anyway. And I'm talking from a person that's had family in jail many times, so it's not like I'm discriminating. I've been there, not in jail, but. But family members, how are y'all gonna use that money? I would like to know, are y'all gonna supplement your income, or are you gonna do things with it?
Well, under the current administration, it has not changed from the previous sheriff. It's still being run the same as it was under the previous sheriff, because under Title 14, the sheriff is required to take that money. I'll give you an example. In 2011, they put that there was $292,000 taken in under the food bill. I know the figures because I kind of know a little bit about it. There was about an excess of $100,000 left that year. Now, the sheriff is required to pay quarterly taxes on it, and the sheriff is typically will donate $20,000+ a year for that tax break. Now, the only way to know where that money is going is to go to the sheriff and say, let me see it. Now, the moment that either one of us are elected, we will have to walk in there and buy the food from Sheriff Rainey, because under Title 14, it is the responsibility of the sheriff. And I got some commissioners in here, and they will tell you they will not touch that with a 10-foot pole, because guess what? It puts all the liability of those 400 inmates on them. So the day that one of us are elected, I'll walk in there and I'll hand Sheriff Rainey a check for $50,000, $75,000 that my wife and I have to go borrow the money at the bank. And I have to buy the food from him. So I will follow the guidelines of the law to what they say about the law, but I will be transparent in it. And what I mean by that is, number one, I think it's an issue that has to be taken off the table. And one of the things I will do once we take office is I'm going to be coming to see these gentlemen, because I think it has to be changed. I don't care what they do in the other 66 counties, but I think for us, I think that's an issue that has to be taken off the table, because we're about the protection of the citizens, not the food bill issue. But I can tell you currently, it's not changed from the previous administration. It's still being run by the same personnel in the same manner, because there's two books. There's the incoming and outgoing book, and then there's the personal checkbook of the sheriff. So if the sheriff says, if they ran a campaign that says, I'm not taking a dime in this money, but you see the sheriff award a scholarship for $5,000, and they say, that's my money, he is right. That is his money, but it's the food bill money. So in essence, they are taking that, and they will, but the only way, you have to do your tax records. You have to look at the sheriff's tax records to know how much money they're generating and how much of it they're keeping through that personal checking account. And I know that's not been made available yet, so, but that's not one of my platform issues. If I'm elected, I will follow the law under Title 14. I will work with the legislators to change the law for a local bill for Cullman County. Like I said, I don't care about the other ones, but I will be transparent. If you want to know where the money's going, you come and talk to me and I'll show you where the money's going.
Let me reiterate what you said, pretty much parallel. I feel the same way about it. It is the sheriff's money. However, I feel like, as long as the bill, or as long as the law stays like it is, then imagine what $100,000 would do for deputies. You've got variant of uniforms, you've got equipment issues, I ran SWAT for 9 years up there, SRT, SWAT, Special Operations, Tactical Unit, whatever you want to call it, and that's very expensive. If you've got 5 discretionary funds like Matt said, but if you got $100,000 in this one account, and you need cover 6 vests, which are about $3,500 a piece, and you need them now, because you've got an issue with running high-risk search warrants, you need to be able to pull that checkbook out and say, oh, I need some vests, without any kind of bid process or anything, because it's discretionary money. So I'm not going to use it for a new pair of cowboy boots or a new truck for myself or nothing like that. But that money can be used effectively inside the sheriff's office. Uniforms, the way the cars look, we've got to present a professional image because it creates confidence in the ranks. That's why the military is so strict on the way you dress and the way you groom. It creates confidence in the ranks, and we have to do that with the sheriff's office.
Well, I understand. I don't have a problem with it going in the middle. I mean, whatever's for the sheriff, that's not what I have a problem, in the department. I don't have a problem with that. It was just.
See, and it's still a private fund, because if it was a public fund, let's say like the sheriff said, I'm going to give it to the county commissioners, then it would be audited. See, that's not a fund that is audited at all. So it's still a private fund currently of the sheriff.
But you can't neglect those prisoners. There's federal prisoners down that we house now that generates, what, $800,000 a year or something like that?
Probably, it's more than that.
Maybe a little more than that.
I think if they were running 100 fed inmates, it was generating about 1.5 million, I think.
We get a percentage of it, or the sheriff's office does, but there are guidelines you have to meet, dietary guidelines you have to meet. So even with that much money that you get, it's in your best interest, and humanely, you have to feed these people correctly. You can't buy I know, I'm not gonna call names, but you can't buy a tractor trailer truckload of frozen corn dogs and feed it to them all the time for a year, obviously. So, when we were there,
They're still human.
that did happen. But when we were there, I walked into, the last sheriff asked me one time, he said, what do you think we should do? Because he was worried about the Morgan County sheriff got in trouble. And I said, you photograph them and you weigh them, intake, and when they leave, you photograph them and weigh them. And I guarantee you, all of them are going to gain weight. Because if you look at that restaurant-style kitchen that the sheriff's office has now, if you put just a little bit of effort into the food prep and the dietary measures, they're going to gain weight. Because number one, about 85% of them are on meth and they don't eat anyways. So, but you got to feed them.
My question, actually, the question, the first two people who spoke, this is going to reiterate what they both said, what they both asked. This lady here, she's going to hear. I'm actually working for a different county. I am law enforcement for 9 years, and I'm looking to pursue a job in Cullman County. That's where I live. So my question is, and this is going to pertain to all this, deputies get lax. When a deputy serving a community, when he's been in it 15, 20 years, he gets, well, really have to throw that, ready to go eat a burger, and I wouldn't go deal with this person's problem, which makes me an issue that you can help, okay? I see this every day where I work and where I worked in the past. I worked for 3 different agencies, okay? Well, what can y'all do to stop the retired on duty, which retired on duty goes back to what this lady said, nobody cares. They don't care that their cat got run over by this guy's speed. They would rather do something else. They're 3 years of retirement. I'm not. That's
Standards.
my question. What can you do to improve standards?
Internal standards.
And they're carrying on the community.
All right, internal standards. You can't have a standard here and lower it down to meet the deputy. You have to have a standard here, and those deputies have to meet the standard, period. I don't know what else to say.
If y'all don't mind, I think everybody is stirring. I live at the ballpark personally, so this is like my one night. I don't have to eat a hot dog. There's plenty of food, and I'm not leaving. I'm enjoying this. I'm glad everybody came. Let's mingle, you know, and y'all can continue asking the questions. And I thank y'all for coming. If you get a chance, please go on your. If you get a chance, look on Facebook, Dodge City Merchants Group. You can find us on there. You can like us. We'll probably do another debate, and we hope you'll find it on there. Okay?